the chairman of the API, for giving me this opportunity to be with you here today. And I thank Dr. Kiran for those profuse kind words of introduction. I have not received any funding to deliver this talk, and I have no conflicts of interest to declare. A physician talking on tuberculosis may be something not exactly everyone is familiar with or comfortable with, but then an idea in 2001 got transformed into an iconic textbook that was reprinted several times over, and the second edition came in 2009, the third edition came in 2019. This has also been reprinted twice, and Mario Raviglione, who was the director Stop TB WHO, said that this is an output from India, a country which not only has the highest TB burden, but has also contributed to many of the major advances in TB care and control over the past decades. The fourth edition is on its way, somewhere middle or late 2025. I have structured this presentation in the following ways. The current TB scenario, the Indian estimates, which is new, the new performance indicators. I'll talk about the change in the nomenclature from LTBI to TBI to the new framework. I will also talk of TB diagnostics, the molecular tests, expert versus ultra. I will not be touching on imaging. PET CT, PET MRI, and the contribution is well known. The others are research tools and are not yet available, at least for 5 to 10 years into practice. The tests for TB infection, the next generation sequencing, whole generation sequencing, non-sputum based tests, which are all research tools as on date, not relevant to a physician who is diagnosing and treating TB in 2025. So while there is a very interesting, tantalizing data on these, I will not be touching those. I will be touching predominantly on molecular diagnostic tests and experts versus ultra. I will talk about the change in the terminology of drug-resistant TB. I will talk of extrapulmonary TB, especially the treatment duration and the role of corticosteroids. And I shall briefly go through the ATS, IDSA, ERS guidelines 2025 for the treatment. So in the next 40 minutes or so, I'll try to engage on these issues. This is the plethora of information available. In fact, there is a flood of information on the internet regarding TB. This constitutes the bread and butter on which I built this presentation.
Oh, he'd love a few more overs than just 5 overs.
So once we look at the current TB scenario, the data is as recent as at 8 p.m. of today. So there is a live source for TB data, which is updated as it arrives. So these data are the latest. If we look at the global burden of TB in terms of the 4 metrics, the incident cases, the HIV negative deaths, because HIV positive death due to any cause is considered a HIV death. That's why we talk of HIV negative deaths in the context of TB. The MDR TB, rifampicin resistant TB, and the HIV TB rate per 100,000 denominator. India has about slightly more than 1/4 of the world burden of TB, and it has got almost 25-30% of the HIV negative TB deaths. And while the problem of MDR TB, RR TB is getting very well contained by innovations in the program, sheer number wise, the MDR RR TB in India is staggering. It is to the tune of 110,000 patients. And the HIV TB rate in India is relatively low as compared with the other parts of the world. So the program, while we were all physicians were busy with COVID, the RNTCP became NTEP. It is one of my favorite questions in the MD exam regarding asking the student what is TB elimination. So we have moved from control to elimination. So what is elimination? So elimination of TB in the initial part 1994 to 2005, we had the dot strategy. 2006 to 2015, the stop TB strategy, and 2016 to 2035, it is end TB strategy. And when the load is less than 1 TB case per million population, that is termed as TB elimination. India is aiming at eliminating TB. India is one of the first countries that went on the path of eliminating TB. Quite bold, I would say. Whether this will transform from a wish to a reality, history will judge us. But it is important to note that the definition of elimination is less than 1 TB case per million population. So if we look at the India TB report 2024, the 2025 report is not yet out. Yesterday was World TB Day. Day before yesterday, that is 24th of March. India has become the first country in the world to develop its own model for estimating the TB burden. This was the publication wherein they calculated the TB incidence rate and TB mortality per 100,000 population, which was considerably, the WHO said 210, the Indian model estimated 196. TB mortality was estimated by WHO to be 35, and the Indian model says it is 23. We have a good reason to believe the Indian model is robust, rugged, reliable, and relevant to our situation. And we are the proud country in the world. We don't simply go by what WHO is saying. We have our own hard data and a good recording and reporting mechanism to say this is a very important recent advance that has happened in the field of TB. So one is TB elimination. The next concept is our own modeling. And there are new metrics. So we have the metrics of presumptive TB examination rate. This metric is called as PTB-ER. It refers to the number of presumptive TB tested per 100,000 population and the proportion of presumptive TB offered molecular diagnostics upfront for the diagnosis of TB. As you see from this Manhattan graph, the numbers are increasing gradually over the last 5 to 6 years. And this is evident both in private as well as in public sectors as well. So what's in a name? Why are we fussing about name? We are fussing about the name because all of us are familiar with latent TB infection, very famously called LTBI, which is a state of persistent immune response to stimulation by Mycobacterium tuberculosis antigens with no evidence of clinically manifest active TB. What's the problem with this? In fact, the term LTBI is being discarded. It's already relegated to background because the infection cannot always be considered latent. Our further understanding of the immunology and the host organism interaction, etc., has clarified that there is nothing we are sure about being latent. So the L disappeared. Over the last 2 to 3 years, the term TBI has come into vogue. Even this TBI is now receding. As per the late 2024 new terminology proposed, we may be reading something else in the years to come. We are in the transition period. Now, why are we worried about? There is a very famous tagline for MAD. What me worry? Why are we worried about TB infection? We are worried about TB infection because of certain important reasons. This is a very often cited paper which we wrote in the Indian Journal of Medical Research some time ago. This is the natural history which is depicted of the people who are exposed Like COVID, every doctor treating TB is exposed to TB bug, but they are not getting infected. And only 30% get infected. When this occurs for the first time, it is TB infection. Of this TB primary infection, it occurs predominantly in children. Of this 30%, only 10% develop primary disease. In 90%, the disease is contained and persists. That is why the diagnosis and treatment of LTBI is important, because this will reactivate later in life due to some known risk factors like this, the age-old HIV, AIDS, immunosuppression and all, the new kids on the block, diabetes mellitus, tobacco smoke. This is a major cause for post-primary TB. That is why once the sputum positive TB control has reached a certain stage, the interest has now shifted on LTBI. The 10% of those infected with M. tuberculosis will develop active TB disease in their lifetime, and 5% do so within the first 2 to 5 years after the initial infection. However, what constitutes a lifetime risk for people who are immunocompetent will constitute the ARI, or the annual risk of infection, for those who are infected with HIV, especially late HIV disease, and those who are immunosuppressed and have very poor post immunity. We are worried about the TB infection because we have the highest TBI burden globally, and 71% of the household contacts of pulmonary TB patients have a baseline TB infection, and the risk of TB infection increases 16 to 21 times in case of HIV co-infection with or without ART treatment. So there was in the National Strategic Plan for TB, the preventive treatment for TB infection is a major part, and the programmatic guidelines for management of TB preventive treatment in India were issued. The basic cascade of care here is in the target population to rule out active TB and identify presumptive TB and start the specific treatment. So algorithmic screening is practiced in the program mode, and it can be implemented by the individual physician tailored to the individual patient. Also, the algorithm is exhaustive. We have an algorithm for the HIV positive individuals, for household contacts of open TB patients, as well as other risk groups. In view of the 30-40 minute time given to me, it is not possible to go through the nitty-gritty of this algorithm, but the fundamental premise is we should not miss active TB. Idea is to identify that there is no active TB, identify the TB infection, and institute treatment for this. So the treatment options for these different target populations, like for example, PL HIV and the household contacts below 5 years of pulmonary TB patients, clear-cut regimens are given here, and how these, like other risk groups, will be also covered in these guidelines. 6 months daily isoniazid, 3 month weekly isoniazid and rifampicin, 3 HP in persons older than 2 years, and so on. These regimens are all real and are being implemented in the NTEP. It is up to us to avail these facilities and now move forward from treating open TB, extrapulmonary TB, to TB infection as well. Now, the coverage of tuberculosis preventive treatment in India has increased leaps and bounds over the last 4 or 5 years, and this is the right move forward. If we have patients who are contacts of MDR TB or rifampicin resistant TB with chloroquine sensitive, H resistant with R sensitive bacteriologically confirmed pulmonary TB pulmonary DR TB patient, there is a option algorithm available to investigate for TB, whether it is a drug susceptible TB or a drug resistant TB, and then plan the tuberculosis preventive treatment here as well. The algorithms each will take some significant amount of time. So my idea today is to sensitize the physicians regarding their existence and implementation already in the program. A word about drug susceptible TB. Drug susceptible TB refers to drug resistance which is identified on culture. When we do a molecular test, so like for example, we do the gene expert, we find the report saying M tuberculosis detected, R resistance not detected, or R resistance detected. There we are looking at the changes which are there in the RRDR, rifampicin resistance determining region. There the organism is not multiplying, so we don't talk about susceptibility, but we talk of drug resistance. So the preventive treatment among household contacts of MDR-TB index patients in whom fluoroquinolone resistance has been ruled out, and among the household contacts of isoniazid resistance index patients in whom R resistance has been ruled out, the target population using the 6 levofloxacin and 4R respectively, it is due to be introduced in a phased manner, occurring in some places, but due to occur in other places. See, one needs to understand
balance with his face, keeps his eyes on the ball, which is very critical.
when somebody is watching an IPL match, they can kindly mute themselves, or we can ask the organizers to mute them. IPL is interesting. One can have fun, but not at the cost of the IPL audio interfering with the presentation. Let's see, the TB is always seen as a disease, a kind of malady, but look at it from the eyes of a TB survivor. This person writes, at first I thought I was the only person who had spent months being misdiagnosed. In 2025, is TB misdiagnosed? Yes, it is. It is the experience of all physicians, including me. The TB is often misdiagnosed. The diagnosis is messed up, and it's a misdiagnosis as well. Not only a misdiagnosis, but a misdiagnosis as well. He says that I learned the unfortunate truth that my experience was not unique. I heard the story after story of misdiagnosis and delayed diagnosis. But the person says he was very happy because my disease was found before my death. And TB being diagnosed after death, such a simple infection. Being diagnosed after death, yes, cryptic biliary TB in adults who are not immunosuppressed is still a post-mortem diagnosis. Right. What is the TB diagnostic landscape? We have moved a long way from tuberculin to igras, which are similar to tuberculin with some advantages, but they don't perform any better. From conventional microscopy to LED and fluorescent microscopy, from solid cultures to liquid cultures, from conventional phenotypic drug susceptibility testing to molecular DST. This is called DRT, like I told earlier, and the LPAs, and the conventional PCR to cartridge-based nucleic acid amplification test. So this is the whole battery of tests we have got. This is the way natural history is understood today. Uninfected TB infection, incipient TB, subclinical TB, and TB disease. This is late 2024. So in the uninfected, nothing is there. When there is TB infection, this test may be positive or may be negative, or allergy may be there. The same is the case with incipient and subclinical TB. Then we have microbiological tests to pick up TB disease and radiological evidence for TB disease. And this is the current change in perspective in the understanding of the natural history of TB. So what are the arsenal available? There are a fantastic range of tests, non-sputum tests, oral swab, breath test. I'm not talking about these today. I will focus on what is on hand available to the physician. The WHO recommended rapid diagnostic tests, or these are called the MWRDS. These tests are classified as per the technology class as tests of moderate complexity automated nucleic acid amplification tests for detection of TB and resistance to rifampicin and isoniazid. These are called MEC and NAT. We have low complexity automated NATs for detection of resistance to isoniazid and second line anti-TB drugs. These are called as LCA NATs. And we have high complexity reverse hybridization based NATs for the detection of resistance to pyrazinamide, HCR NAT. These are the various products. Some names you are familiar, like for example, Expert MTB XDR. Expert MTB is the gene expert, which Expert MTB RIF is the well-known gene expert. Expert MTB XDR is from Kefide Sunnyvale. This is one of the low complexity automated NATs. We have machines from Abbott, Becton Dickinson, etc., which are moderate complexity automated NATs. These are all evolving, not yet available widely in the program mode or for the practitioner, but these are the technologies which will be commonplace in the next year or two to come, assuming the presence of some of the postgraduates in this August audience. I thought I'll sensitize the interested persons to these possibilities. We also have got initial diagnostic tests which diagnose TB, but they do not detect the drug resistance. Loopamp MTBC detection kit and the fluorotype MTB. These are the fluorotype is an automated NAT, and the Loopamp is a manual or automated NAT. And these identify MTB, but they don't detect drug resistance. This is the important shortfall or drawback of these tests, but technology-wise, they are easily implementable even at a rural health center level. So Expert and Expert Ultra would have come into the program, but for COVID, because during COVID, the CBNet machines of the program were deployed for COVID diagnosis to run with the COVID cartridges. That has got some delay in this. Soon we will be having Expert Ultra also in the program, free of cost to the patient. Not a penny more, not a penny less. It incorporates two different multi-copy amplification targets. IS61 has a larger DNA reaction chamber than the Expert MTB RIF, which is the gene expert. This has a limit of detection, LOD, of 16 colony forming units per ml compared with 114 higher burden, which is required for Expert MTB RIF. So, major meta-analysis has also been published comparing the Expert Ultra versus Expert MTB RIF for pulmonary TB. And the advantages of Expert Ultra are higher sensitivity but lower specificity than Expert MTB RIF for PTB, especially sputum smear negative PTB, people living with HIV, and in subjects with history of PTB. For detection of rifampicin resistance, the performance of Ultra is same more or less as that of Expert MTB RIF. For a population of 1,000 people, where 100 of those presenting with symptoms have PTB, Expert Ultra will miss 9 cases, whereas Expert MTB RIF, which is the gene expert, it will miss 15 cases. The number of people wrongly diagnosed with PTB would be 40 with Expert Ultra and 14 with Expert MTB RIF. All the technologies have to be used keeping in mind these limitations. This is technology for not long later future, but technologies for near tomorrow. We wrote up a publication in Professor Jindal's textbook. Professor Jindal, at that point in time, he wanted this summarization of the current evidence. This is a very important table for the benefit of postgraduates. So the LPA has the turnaround time duration 72 hours, sensitivity 97%, specificity 100%, positive predictive value is 100%, and the negative predictive value is 99%. Expert MTB RIF turnaround time is 2 hours. Sensitivity for PTB is 95%, little less for EPTB. Specificity for PTB is again higher. The specificity for EPTB of expert is also reasonably good. The positive and negative predictive values are also impressive. If you take Ultra, Ultra has a higher performance compared with PTB in terms of sensitivity, but for EPTB, the specificity of Ultra is slightly low. So these caveats have to be kept in mind. Expert is as such available free of cost to everyone under the program up to a PhD level. The grouping of the anti-TB drugs has changed, and the drugs used to treat drug-resistant TB, there used to be more classes earlier. Now they are classified as 3 classes: Group A, Group B, 3 groups: Group A, Group B, and Group C. Group A it includes levofloxacin, moxifloxacin, bedaquiline, and linezolid. Group B includes clofazimine, cycloserine, and terazidone. Group C includes ethambutol, dalamanid, pyrazinamide, IPM-CL, and imipenem cilastatin, etc., as is listed here. This is a significant change. This one change in classification delayed my 3rd edition by 1 year, because all the 6-7 chapters had to be revised and updated based on this data. So, Group A drugs, the drug-resistant TB terminology has undergone a change as well. To get a clinical specimen, you test it with expert MTB RIF, first line and second line LPA. You detect M tuberculosis complex, and there is a resistance to rifampicin and isoniazid, with or without resistance to other anti-TB drugs. This would be MDR-TB. You have a resistance to a single anti-TB drug. It is monodrug resistant TB. Resistance to more than one drug, but not R plus H. R plus H, though it is more than one, it is called MDR-TB. Resistance to any more than one drug, not R plus H, is called as polydrug resistant TB, and you have a drug susceptible TB. And the MDR-TB again has pre-XDR-TB and XDR-TB as categories. And the terminologies like TDR-TB, like Bunyan size, XL, XXL, is wrong. This terminology is to be, some publications carry it, but this should be discouraged. Before 2021, the definition of XDR-TB was what was formulated in the year 2006. It is MDR-TB plus resistance to any fluoroquinolone plus resistance to at least one of the 3 second-line injectable drugs. However, the terminology of the drug-resistant TB was updated in 2021, and the resistance to R plus H is MDR-TB plus MDR-TB plus resistance to fluoroquinolones is pre-XDR-TB, and this plus at least one of the Group A drugs. One of the Group A drugs, that is bedaquiline and linezolid, one of these 2 is XDR-TB. So this is MDR-TB. MDR-TB with fluoroquinolone resistance is pre-XDR. Pre-XDR plus resistance to this or this, bedaquiline or linezolid, is XDR-TB. This is the new current definition which everyone should have clarity about. If we see the XDR-TB burden, percentage of previously treated TB cases with MDR or rifampicin resistant TB, it is percent pre-XDR among MDR is 20%. Percent of XDR among MDR is 8%. This is a viva question for the postgraduates in the MD examination. It may even be a paper 4 recent advances question. So I am giving these data. The postgraduates may note down these numbers. Proportion of percent of pre-XDR among MDR is 20. Percent of XDR among MDR is 8. There are very well worked out algorithms for upfront diagnosis of drug-resistant TB. The upfront diagnostic test today in the program is NAT, either for pulmonary TB or for extrapulmonary TB. On NAT, one can identify whether the specimen is drug susceptible or drug resistant, and if drug resistant, with the use of LPA, whether it is monopoly resistant or whether it is MDR, XDR, etc. Again, due to constraints of time, I am not going into this nitty-gritty detailed explanation of this particular algorithm. These are available in public domain. One can read them at leisure. So this earlier one shows when rifampicin resistant not detected, rifampicin resistant detected, and if rifampicin resistant detected, how this second specimen is tested, and what are the criteria for the treatment regimens, etc. Drug resistant TB will not primarily be treated by physicians in other than an institutional setup. So in the interest of physicians who treat, I have focused more on drug susceptible TB, pulmonary and extrapulmonary TB. This itself is a very specialized subject and may not be of practical relevance to most physicians, but they should be aware such a system exists. And this is the detailed algorithm. Now, there has been a move in 2024 to move away from using injectables to treat drug resistant TB. If you have treated the MDR TB, you will know how difficult it is for the patient to comply with it. Months and months of injections. There have been some landmark studies like the TB practical trial from South Africa, Belarus, Uzbekistan, the NIX TB studies from South Africa, the Z-NIX study from South Africa, Georgia, Moldova, and the Russian Federation, and the next trial from South Africa. In the 2022 update, the WHO consolidated guidelines recommended a 6-month bedaquiline, ritomanib, linezolid, and moxifloxacin B-PALM regimen for MDR TB and pre-XDR TB rather than the 9-month or the longer 18-month regimens. This is a conditional recommendation and the evidence is of low certainty. And they have also recommended a 9-month all oral regimen rather than the longer 18-month regimen in patients with MDR TB in whom resistance to fluoroquinolone has been excluded, and in patients with confirmed rifampicin susceptible isoniazid resistant TB, a 6-month all oral regimen with rifampicin, ethambutol, pyrazinamide, and levofloxacin recommended. And this is again a conditional recommendation. Right. On 6th of September 2024, the Government of India made available the B-PALM regimen, which consists of 4 drugs, bedaquiline, pretomanid, linezolid, and moxifloxacin. For this is a newer, shorter, and more efficacious treatment regimen for drug-resistant TB. It is available, gradually introduced in a phased manner throughout the country through the program that is PMDT, Programmatic Management of Drug-Resistant TB. No other country in the world has this provision. The Government of India is to be appreciated for this drastic initiative. And treatment of extrapulmonary TB has been a matter of conjecture and controversy. The first iteration of the evidence-based index TB guidelines were published, and later on we brought out a SRMA, a systematic review and meta-analysis of the diagnosis and treatment of extrapulmonary TB. These are the case definitions for EPTB: presumptive case, bacteriologically confirmed case, and a clinically diagnosed case. A clinically diagnosed case is a patient with negative microbiological test for TB, but with strong clinical suspicion and other evidence of EPTB, such as imaging, histological findings. Histological findings, mind you, still make it a clinical diagnosed case. It doesn't make it a confirmed TB, bacteriologically confirmed case. And these definitions are used to initiate therapy in the patients. And what is the duration of treatment? So this is a controversial topic, and the guidelines, Index TB, the WHO, the ATS, CDC, IDSA, there is Infectious Disease Society of America, NICE guidelines. They fix the regimen predominantly between 6 to 9 months. Bone and joint TB, there is a controversy. There have been recent publications using PET CT to say that treatment may be required for longer duration, maybe for 12 to 18 months, but this is not yet part of the guideline. It is not yet part of the guideline. So in the individualized patients, if there is a facility to monitor the disease activity, persistence of the activity with PET CT or PET MRI, the regimen may be extended in the individual patient. But the programmatic guidelines are like this. But what the physician is to be worried about is, previously the continuation phase of treatment of drug susceptible TB was HR. But now we are using HRE. We are using ethambutol in addition to isoniazid and rifampicin throughout the treatment duration. So what is the ethambutol eye toxicity when we use it? When we use ethambutol for 9 months, when we use ethambutol for 12 months, as in the case of TB meningitis, we have to be very careful. It is quite common. Physicians must be very, very alert, asking for the ocular symptoms, and when there is a suspicion, to ask your ophthalmology colleague to do a Goldman perimetry with a red-green target to look for the typical presentation of ethambutol toxicity. If it is identified early and the medicine is withheld, ethambutol eye toxicity is reversible. And I appreciate the artist who is drawing lines on my screen. A very fabulous contribution. You can join Picasso and Michelangelo. The second iteration of the treatment training module for extrapulmonary TB was issued in 2023. There are various regimens of differing durations. If you look at the spinal TB, what is the evidence for this? We don't know. This is a training module, not a guideline. It came after the Index TB guidelines, which were the evidence-based guidelines. So what is the role of corticosteroids? TB meningitis, HIV seronegative, corticosteroids are recommended. Strong recommendation. For TB meningitis and HIV seropositive, they may be used. It is a conditional recommendation in individuals where other life-threatening opportunistic infections are absent or ruled out. For TB pericarditis, both HIV seronegative and seropositive patients, corticosteroids are recommended. For TB pleural effusion, the corticosteroids are not. And with regard to TB disease, the screening for TB in targeted populations, the tools that are available are chest radiograph, CAD, that is computer-aided detection, and the molecular WHO recommended rapid diagnostic test for TB, which are the MWRDS. In adults and adolescents living with HIV in areas with a high TB burden, screening with chest X-ray, CRP, molecular WHO recommended diagnostic test. They improve the sensitivity of the WHO recommended 4 symptom screen: cough, fever, weight loss, or night sweats for detecting TB. This is a new dimension which has just been published. This depicts the new understanding with regard to the disease dimension, which is pathology, infectiousness, signs and symptoms, the benefit of diagnosis and intervention, individual benefit, society benefit, and the disease. So we have no disease, subclinical TB non-infectious, subclinical TB infectious, clinical TB non-infectious, clinical TB infectious, with the outcomes being self-cleared, infected, fully recovered, post-TB sequelae, and death. So this is not yet guideline. This is a new, very new terminology which is proposed, and maybe in the years to come, they may get as a part of the guidelines which will be ensuing. There has been a very recent update on the treatment of drug susceptible and drug resistant TB. My friend UC Sokonen is the first author for this paper. UC had contributed to the chapter on anti-TB induced hepatotoxicity in my book in the third edition. And UC Sakunen and team, these guidelines put forward some recommendations. We have a for isoniazid susceptible rifampicin susceptible TB in adults. There is a isoniazid, rifampicin, pyrazinamide, and moxicillin. This is a guideline from the US. It is not yet implemented in programmatic conditions in India, and there is no regulatory clearance to use this regimen in individual private practice. At this point in time, one should be aware this has been introduced. It would be prudent to wait, and once the regulatory clearances are issued, and these are endorsed by the NRHM, National Rural Health Mission, and the Central TB Division, they may be put to practice. One should not try to replicate what is approved somewhere else blindly in the Indian context because of various fears, including the occurrence of drug resistance, which is a monster. The 4-drug regimen trials are already almost finished. We expect very soon in the Indian scenario the guidelines for use of 4-drug regimen. As of now, it is not yet guideline in India, but very soon to be. Then we have if there is a rifampicin resistant, fluoroquinolone resistant TB, there is a B-PAL regimen, bedaquiline, pretomanid, linezolid, and treatment of rifampicin resistant, fluoroquinolone susceptible TB. There is the B-PALM regimen, which has been introduced into the program. TB is a very rapidly changing picture. The landscape of diagnostics, the landscape of vaccine, the landscape of treatment are all changing. I deliberately did not go into the vaccine. I have not talked about the adult BCG vaccination study, which is ongoing. We don't have the full data as yet. As yet, it is still in a research mode. Several physicians have asked, should we take BCG yet again? As of now, trial data, and there are no hard recommendations on this. So one has to be cautious before saying this. New vaccines have been mentioned. There is a brief report on these comparable or better efficacy than BCG, but they are not yet available in the public domain. So in interest of time, I have restricted to briefly mentioning regarding this. So we have the NTEP support schemes. The program supports aggressively the treatment of TB patients who receive treatment. We have the Nikshay Portion Yojana. We have the tribal support scheme, treatment supporter honorarium, and incentive for notification and outcomes. After all, everyone can benefit, who is deserving can benefit from these schemes, and it is prudent for physicians to interact with the program so that there is a decent public-private mix, at least passing on the benefits to the deserving beneficiaries. So I tried to cover what has been major in the last couple of years with regard to TB in terms of diagnostics. And I have not gone into the newer, very major research tools like breath test for TB, the buccal smear swab test for TB, and such things, newer drugs in pipeline, newer vaccines, etc., etc. Because they will take some time to be available. What is relevant, what a physician is practicing every day, day in and day out, is what mattered to me. And I would conclude by quoting from the Kenopanishad, he by whom it is not thought of, by whom it is not thought out, has the thought of it. He by whom it is thought out knows it not. It is unknown to the discernment of those who discern of it, by those who seek not to discern of it. It is discerned. TB is always smarter than us. We take 3 steps, it is taking 30 steps. Since more than last 125 years since Robert Koch had identified the organism causing TB. It is still a major issue to contend with, so much so that the director TB program WHO says we should not be slack in our efforts, lest TB will again viciously hit at us. If COVID was a 30-second ad, TB is a Bahubali movie going on and on and on to educate us. I conclude my presentation here, and if there are any quick questions to be answered, given the time constraints of the organizers, I'll try to tackle them. Thank you very much.
Hey, Dr. Ramanamurthy,
Sir, namaste, sir.
very well spoken. It is an oration rather than a simple lecture. We have to appreciate throughout. Thank you, sir.
Namaste, sir.
Thank you, sir. Actually, on the occasion of TB, World TB Day, you have covered from history to the recent up to date on the up to last hours update. That's really great, and that's not possible for everybody to cover.
Kiran sir. Manoj sir, mute here.
Prepared position needed, and most of the time I don't know, most of the time even chest physician also maybe learning more from this lecture rather than a physician, because last of the new investigation especially that not available, not known to many of the not only physician, chest physician also, sir. And
Yeah, there is Madam Padmalata, madam says she has a query. Yes, madam, please.
Yes, sir. Sir,
Namaste, madam.
Namaste, sir. This is Padmata, respective physician. Sir, what is your that data about post-COVID TB incidents, sir?
Yes, madam.
Yes,
There,
sir.
during the active epidemic, there was a directive from the scientific division to do bidirectional screening for persons with COVID vis-a-vis whoever is COVID testing COVID negative to look for tuberculosis by expert, and those who tested positive for whom we test for TB, who test negative on expert to look at COVID for them. After that, the COVID has affected the lung variably in different people. So the destroyed lung per se, a scarred lung per se, is a risk factor both for reactivation TB and reactivation, not only reactivation TB, but for NTM also. We are presently doing, it is into the 5th year, 7-center multicentric study funded by ICMR with regard to non-TB mycobacteria, wherein we are doing cultures, not simply screening by expert. The starting point is expert smear positive, expert negative, and the expert negative is cultured, and then LPA is done for speciation. We have done up to the NGS, next generation sequencing, for NTM, and every patient we have meticulously recorded the history of COVID vaccination as well as COVID, how many times they suffered also, and there is definitely a predisposition of individuals with a scarred lung, whether it is the effect of COVID per se or the effect of a scarred lung, which has become more frequent because of COVID. We don't know, madam. Definitely it predisposes both for reactivation tuberculosis as well as for NTM.
As per the records, sir, I'm asking, as per the records from the tuberculosis center, sir, is there any hike in the incidence in the post-COVID, sir?
Madam, actually, the data for year 2021, 22 are not reliable, madam. Reporting was incomplete. The current data is not recording COVID. 23 data reported in 24 report, and 24 data which we are expecting in 25. The meticulous documentation of COVID has not been done, other than the initial bidirectional screening part. I know this part very clearly because in our protocol, we saw 77,000 patients in 7 centers. Our data close to 80,000, 77,000 something. Definitely, I feel more than the COVID per se, this scarred lung, which has been, which is likely to be the risk factor for the development of TB or NT.
The reactivation of the latent TB infection may be. Thank you very much. You please, మమ్మల్ని గుర్తుపెట్టుకోండి సార్ టీబీ అని చెప్పమని కూడా.
మేడం,
థ్యాంక్ యూ సార్.
టీబీకి భాషా భేదాలు, డిపార్ట్మెంట్ భేదాలు ఉండవు మేడం, అందరూ కలిసి పోరాడాలి.
If any other doubts, we can. We are going to conclude. I think April 27th we are having the zonal CME in Nellore. I think you can meet personally. Dr. Allari Mohan sir there also, and we are also planning one more talk there with Dr. Allari Mohan sir, and zonal CME Nellore 27th April Sunday, last Sunday. I invite everybody. Those are interested, please kindly attend and make it a success. Conclude చేద్దాం సార్. కిరణ్ గారు.
కిరణ్ సార్, యా.
We'll conclude, sir.
Yes, sir.
Kiran. Yeah.
Thank you,
So,
everyone,
thank you
for putting up with a long lecture. It's something normally in the national conference these days we get 12 minutes to talk. So it's a kind of relief to have some breathing time. And
but it covered everything, sir. It covered everything, and ఏదో చాలా త్వరగా అయిపోయినట్టు అనిపించింది. మీకు లాంగ్ లెక్చర్ అనిపిస్తుంది, మాకేదో టైం ఏంటో ఇట్లా త్వరగా రెండు నిమిషాలు చెప్పేటట్టు.
ఇది కష్టం సార్, అంటే వాస్ట్ కంటెంట్ ఉన్నది, బట్
అంత లాంచ్ అనిపించలేదు. ఎంత ఉంటే అసలు చాలా ప్రెసైజ్ గా ఫాస్ట్ గా వెళ్ళారు. అసలు ఎంత మొత్తం అప్ టు డేట్ కవర్ చేయడం ఇస్ రియల్లీ గ్రేట్ సార్. థ్యాంక్ యూ వెరీ మచ్.
స్లైడ్స్ ఏమన్నా పంపించగలరండి ఆర్గనైజర్స్ మా నంబర్? అంటే స్టాటిస్టిక్స్ డేటా అది ఉంది కదా, చాలా బాగుంది. స్లైడ్స్ ఏమైనా షేర్ చేయగలరు?
బాస్ వినబట్లేదు కిరణ్.
స్లైడ్స్ షేర్ చేయగలరా సార్?
I leave it to Dr. Kiran.
Sir, your wish, sir. If you can slide, we'll share it among the group.
Alage.
Sir,
screenshot తీసుకోవడం కావాలండి.
2 questions from my side, sir. Sorry, I'm not able to deal with that. Sir, why is ethambutol being removed from the cystic, sir? Because it is a backbone still all these days as our therapy. Why is now ethambutol being removed from the guidelines?
లేదు సార్, ఇథాంబుటాల్ డ్రగ్ ససెప్టబుల్ టీబీ త్రూ అవుట్ ట్రీట్మెంట్ ఇస్తున్నాం కదా సార్, రిమూవ్ చేయలేదు.
అదే కదా సార్, అంటే ATS గైడ్లైన్స్ లో వాళ్ళు చెప్పారు కదా సార్.
ఇది అప్డేట్ సార్. ఇది అప్డేట్ అంటే ఉన్నదానికి అది అడిషనల్ ప్రత్యామ్నాయం కాదు ఇది.
ఓకే సార్, ఓకే.
షార్ట్ రెజిమెన్ ఇచ్చినప్పుడు ఇథాంబుటాల్ దానికి చంపే శక్తి తక్కువ, అది ప్రత్యుత్పత్తిని నిరోధిస్తుంది. సో ఈ షార్ట్, దిస్ ఇస్ నాట్ ఎ కంప్లీట్ update or guidelines. This 2025 thing is the update. Update means ఉన్నదానికి అడిషనల్ మెటీరియల్ విత్ ఎవిడెన్స్. ఈ 4-month రెజిమెన్ లో దాన్ని పెట్టలేదు బికాస్ ఆఫ్ ఇట్స్ బేసిక్ మెకానిజం ఆఫ్ యాక్షన్. ఆ డ్రగ్స్ తో
And one more small note, like where are these clinical trials being undertaken, sir? Like in the sense,
clinical trials for drug resistant TB primarily are being done in South Africa and the రష్యన్ సబ్ కాంటినెంట్. ఇప్పుడు వార్ వచ్చి అది ఇంటరప్ట్ అయి ఉంటుంది, కానీ ఆ 7 అజర్బైజాన్, తుర్క్మెనిస్తాన్, ఉజ్బెకిస్తాన్, తుర్క్మెనిస్తాన్, అజర్బైజాన్ ఆ కంట్రీస్ లో ఎక్కువ జరుగుతుంది సార్. ఇండియాలో డ్రగ్ రెసిస్టెంట్ టీబీ ట్రయల్స్ ఎక్కువ లేవు, ఎందుకంటే ది ఇండియన్ గవర్నమెంట్ has become very sensitive to India being used as a field for all bizarre new trials.
Okay.
అందువల్ల
అంటే
రెగ్యులేటరీ ట్రయల్ చేయడము, రీసెంట్ సంబడి ఆస్క్డ్ మీ టు డూ వన్ ఆఫ్ ద ట్రయల్స్, బట్ ది అమౌంట్ ఆఫ్ పేపర్ మెడిసిన్ ప్రొఫెసర్ గా పనిచేసుకుంటూ ట్రయల్ అది ఫుల్ టైం చేయాలి సార్, అది పేషెంట్ లోడ్ ఉన్నా అది సాధ్యపడదని చెప్పాను. సో ట్రయల్ వస్తారు, వాళ్ళు అప్రోచ్ చేస్తారు, కఠినమైన డాక్యుమెంటేషన్ ఉంటుంది సార్. అంటే అక్కడ కొందరు ఫుల్ టైం మెడికల్ కాలేజ్ ప్రొఫెసరు పాఠం చెప్పాలి, సిబిఎంఈ కరికులము, క్లాసులు, బెడ్ సైడ్ ఎగ్జామ్లు ఇవి చేసుకుంటూ క్లినికల్ ట్రయల్ కూడా చేయడం, అంటే పాట పాడుకుంటూ వైలిన్ వాయించుకుంటూ డాన్స్ చేయడం లాంటివి. సో అది ఫుల్ టైం టిఆర్సీ లాంటి వాళ్ళు వేరే పని పాట లేకుండా ట్రయల్ మాత్రమే చేస్తారు, వాళ్ళు చేస్తారు.
Thank you so much.
మనకు అసలు టెస్టింగే లేట్ అయిపోతుంది సార్ అక్కడ పంపించిన తర్వాత. డ్రగ్ రెసిస్టెన్స్ టెస్టింగ్ లేట్ అయిపోతుంది. ఆఫ్టర్ రిసాంప్షన్ రెసిస్టెన్స్ తర్వాత విశాఖపట్నం అది పంపిస్తుంటే చాలా లేట్ అవుతుంది సార్.
ఎప్పుడో వస్తుంది,
చాలా లేట్ అయిపోతుంది. ఈ లోపు పేషెంట్స్ వచ్చి మన ఓపీలో కూర్చుంటారు, ఏమి చేయలేని హెల్ప్లెస్ సిచ్యుయేషన్. దీన్ని ఏదైనా చెయ్యాలి సార్, మీరు కొంచెం ఎక్కువ సెంటర్స్ పెట్టడమా, మ్యాన్ పవర్ పెంచడం, ఇలాంటి వాళ్ళు ఇనిషియేటివ్ తీసుకోవాలి.
మధ్యలో ఏమైందంటే మేడం, కోవిడ్ డిస్ట్రప్షన్ ఇన్ని రోజులు బండి లాగుతున్నారు, కానీ ఇది అస్తమానం కోవిడ్ చెప్పుకుంటూ బతకలేం కదా.
అంతకు ముందు కూడా లేట్ అయ్యేది సార్ బాగాను. పేషెంట్ దెమ్సెల్స్ విజిట్ కమ్ పాపం వాలంటరీగా వచ్చేది కదా రిపోర్ట్స్. ఇది గవర్నమెంట్ రికమెండ్ చేయండి సార్ మీరు, టు ఇంప్రూవ్ ద టెక్నాలజీ కానీ మ్యాన్ పవర్ కానీ సెంటర్స్ కానీ. థ్యాంక్ యూ వెరీ మచ్.
Thank you so much, sir. Thank you, sir, for your lucid talk and giving us your time for this CME, sir. Thank you, sir.
See you in Nellore.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you, sir.
We conclude the session now. Thank you, everybody, for participation. And I thank Dr. Manoj Kumar, sir, Dr. S.V. Ramanamurthy, sir, and all the senior professors who attended the lecture, and all the postgraduates and other physicians who have been at this busy hour of Wednesday in the evening, have come and we are trying to work hard for the say elimination of tuberculosis from Indian subcontinent. Thank you, one and all. We conclude the session.
Thank you, sir.
Thank you.